I met Lucy for the first time when she fell asleep on my arm on the bus. When she woke up, she gave me a really weird look before shambling off the bus. I figured she was weirded out that I didn't wake her up sooner, so I kicked myself for being a creep and went on with my day. You can't win them all, I guess. I was thrown for a hell of a loop when her whole friend group was sitting by my usual spot on the bus the next day. Being an awkward teen, I wasn't about to turn down any kind of positive attention. I got to know her friends and ended up on good terms with her before I realized I hadn't asked for her name. I'm a bit hard of hearing, so I didn't hear her when she said her name. Lucy, right? Yeah. Lucy and I had your typical high school courting process. That is to say, she was overwhelmingly forward, and after a few weeks I finally got the hint. As we were getting close, Lucy would fixate on learning about past heartbreak and finding out about my personal life. I'm a serial oversharer, so I didn't really mind talking about myself, but she would constantly butt in, saying how fucked up things were and that she'd kick my friend's ass for hurting me. I was weirded out. Even at 16, I knew that was pretty cringy, and I was going through my emo phase at the time. The thing that really bugged me at the time was that she'd asked so much about me, but she would never say anything about herself. It made me feel shitty, always venting and never helping her out. During this time, she missed a few days, and I let another girl sit by me, since it was an overcrowded bus and I didn't think it mattered much. When Lucy finally came back and saw me sitting by another girl, you'd think she'd just gotten shot. She just about ran to the seat behind us and started going off. I can't remember exactly what Lucy said, but the other girl never talked to me again after that. Once her rival was gone, Lucy reclaimed her spot next to me, and all was sunshine and rainbows. Nobody ever asked to sit in Lucy's spot after that. Lucy always had a crude sense of humor, but after a while things started to get hurtful. She would take jabs at my insecurities, and any time I got upset about it, she would give me shit for not being able to take a joke. These jokes usually stopped just shy of outright insulting me. When Lucy wasn't breaking me down, though, she was super affectionate. She would sleep on my chest while we rode home on the bus, and she'd even talk about herself from time to time. I don't remember the first time she hit me. It seems like something that would be burned into my memory, some kind of cinematic moment in my life. But honestly, it all just blended together after a while. I know it started off small, though, flicking me and playful slapping. By the end of it, she would elbow me hard in the ribs for telling a bad joke. It didn't register as anything abusive until she slammed me into a wall while we were walking through the hallway after class. I told a shitty joke, and she shoved me as hard as she could into the wall. She laughed because of the sound I made, before shoving me again. People were going through the halls with us, but they didn't do anything. Sometimes I wonder what they must have thought of me. I didn't dump her after the hallway incident, but I did start standing up for myself. We started to get into a lot of fights after that. Of course, they only ever ended in one of two ways. Either she was right, or it was an honest mistake. I tried to break things off a few times around that time, but every time I did, she would have a new sob story I hadn't heard before that made her actions totally understandable. I let it get in my head that she was some tragic soul and that I could somehow help her. I convinced myself there was something noble about taking the abuse, and nobody I knew tried to step in and help me. I finally got the nerve to dump her after 3 major things happened within a 3-week span. First, I found out she was taking pictures of me while I wasn't looking and posting them online. The weird thing was that I only found out because she showed me. It felt gross seeing a bunch of nearly identical pictures of me not facing the camera. The way she showed me was worse. She seemed excited by it, like I'd be happy she had invaded my privacy. The second weird thing that happened was when I tried to wake her up on the bus. After about a half hour on my chest not saying anything, I nudged her shoulder since we were at our stop, and she just got up, looked me in the eye, and told me that she wasn't asleep. Combined with the pictures, this seemed really weird to me. She didn't try to be cute or romantic about it or anything, just, I pretend to sleep on you sometimes. What the hell? The breaking point came when she was showing off some award she got from school. There was something off about the award. It didn't have her name on it. Oh no, it had her name. It even had a picture of her smiling on it. The problem was that it wasn't addressed to a Lucy. You can't imagine what it felt like when I found out I didn't even know my own girlfriend's name. A few days later, we got into one of our usual fights, and I broke things off. Lucy always was the persistent type. She would sit a few rows behind me on the bus and stare at me while I went to my car after getting off. Looking at her wouldn't make her stop. It felt like she wanted me to know she was watching me. One day, when she got on the bus, she looked me right in the eyes for a solid 20 seconds while she walked past me to her new seat. I'm pretty sure she was expecting me to say something to her. The next year, I finally graduated and got a retail job. End of the story, right? I thought so too. It was the start of Christmas season, and I was working as a cashier that night. Lucy came into the store I was working at. Random chance. It had been a year and a half since we'd broken up at this point, so I wasn't happy to see her, but surely we could pretend it wasn't weird. She gave me this look like the squirrel in Ice Age gives his nuts. She grabbed something from the front and went right into my line. She didn't say a word to me, but she wouldn't break eye contact, and she was swaying like an excited toddler. It hurt just to look at her. I rang her up silently and waited for her to leave. I looked at the other cashier for support, and she told me that she was getting weird vibes. I got this really bad gut feeling after Lucy left. Lucy became a regular at our little shop. She would come in and creep out my coworkers. Lucy never really tried to hide what she was doing. One of the cashiers mentioned how often she came while ringing her out, and she would say that she was visiting me. She didn't say my name, but she described me. After that, whenever she showed up, someone would make note of it on the radio. She was usually in one of the areas bordering my workspace. I heard about her a lot more than I saw her, so I think maybe she was hiding from me. She never got banned from the store despite lots of complaints, because the managers were penny-pinching assholes who would sell any one of us out to get sales up. I know Lucy was responsible for at least one resignation from my workplace. Someone who looked like me caught her staring a few times and heard about how often she came. After a while, the stress just wasn't worth minimum wage. The last time I saw Lucy at the store was a little over a year ago now. I was hanging out with one of the girls in the back while we were loading up carts with stuff we had to stock. We were right by the back entrance, so you could see right in from the front of the store proper. I left to put the stuff in my cart, and when I came back I saw her. She was standing about 40 feet from the back entrance, as still as a statue. I froze when I saw her. I watched her stare into the back for what felt like hours, before she suddenly turned around and walked briskly away. The girl I was talking to was still in the back when I got back, and she was a lot more awkward after that. The girl quit 3 days later, and just about crushed my ribs when she hugged me goodbye. She hated her job, so I'd like to think it didn't have anything to do with Lucy, but I guess I can never know for sure. I left the store not too long after that, and got a job that didn't involve customer service. That wasn't the last time I saw her, though. Over the summer, after taking my new job, I had a bit of a mental breakdown. I convinced myself that I was unlovable, and that Lucy was the only person I could possibly be with. I left the house without any conceivable plan to find her. With the stars in the sky, lit by street lamps, I saw her. She was with another girl. I got so close I could almost touch her, before I snapped to my senses. I thought about her stalking me at the store, and I realized I was becoming like her. I ran home and I cried that night. The last time I saw Lucy was last week. I was walking home from work and decided to stop for some dinner. I thought I saw her in line, but I convinced myself it was someone else. I ordered and sat down to eat. I was looking out the window while I ate, and she took the table between me and the window I was looking out. She was with some guy that looked vaguely familiar, maybe a school friend. She was sat in an angle, so she was half looking at him, and every few seconds she would look right at me. I know it was her. She changed her hair, and it looks an awful lot like mine now. After I finished, I went to the bathroom because I felt sick. After washing my hands, I looked into the mirror, and I felt like I could die. It hadn't occurred to me before, but I was wearing my work uniform, complete with company name on my hat in big letters. She must have been reading my hat. Lucy hasn't been to my current job yet, but I'm sure she'll turn up eventually. I'm moving soon, so I'm just hoping I'm not here anymore when she does show up. Lucy's been a part of my life for the past 4 years. We dated for 4 months in high school, and now she keeps turning up. I wasn't a paragon of mental health before I met her, but I feel like she broke me as a person, and I'll never forgive her for what she did to me. Since her abuse and her stalking, I've developed serious trust issues. I get painfully nervous leaving my house, and people who show interest in me immediately put me on edge. I've tried to date since, but I just can't. It's too much work at this point, so I've decided that I'll stay single until I can work through some of my issues. I've worked night audit for a New Bampton in one of the safest areas near me for a little over 2 years now. It's got direct access to 2 main highways. I've had a fair share of creepy guests and weirdos, but most were easy check-ins or fixes, and they're on their way. However, last night changed everything up. As safe as my property is, we do have shady $40 a night motels on either side of our building. There's been some shit that went down at both places, and occasionally their guests try to sneak into my hotel for a free breakfast. I have, on 2 occasions, seen the police raid both hotels and spend all night searching for people who ran, collecting evidence as well, I presume. It's been a while since I've had such entertainment, though. So anyway, it's about 2:30 a.m., and I'm getting ready to run my night audit. My doors are locked, and this guy who's dirty but in a construction worker kind of way walks up. We have plenty of construction workers stay here, as we aren't far from their site and we're rated number 1 in the area. So I open the door for him and ask if he needs a room before I run the audit. He grins at me, but it's anything but a warm welcome. It looks fake and almost threatening. He looks at me for a second and says, "I have a guest in room 144. His wording caught me off guard. Not many say they have a guest in a room. Usually it's "I'm here for" or "I'm meeting." The second issue is that we don't have a room 144, and neither do any of the same brand names in my area. I've been to all the immediate ones. So I inform him that we don't have a room 144. He looks at me for a second and says, "Aw, shucks, I guess I got stood up." He giggles and walks out the door, I thought this was very odd, but whatever. I go back to running the audit. As I'm finishing up, the phone rings. A guy starts chuckling and says there's a car in your parking lot with its lights on. Oh, and by the way, I'm the guy that just got stood up. Now one, it's been 30 minutes since he walked out my door. Why is he still hanging around in my parking lot? 2. Nobody has come or gone since him, and there are no lights on in the parking lot before he came. And 3. Why do I need to know that you're the guy who got stood up? I brush it off as a bit odd, but my gut is telling me something weird is going on here. I wait about 5 minutes, and then walk around to the front of the building from the inside, and see no cars in my parking lot with lights on. It's not very well lit, so it will be pretty easy to spot. I'm back at the front desk, waiting for audit to finish up its thing so I can get ready to start breakfast, when the phone rings again. I pick it up and it's the creepy guy again, telling me there's lights on in the parking lot. It must have been at least another 20 minutes since the last call, so again, why would he still be in my parking lot? I feel I may have missed something between the windows, so I go to my locker door, peek my head out real quick to do a swift scan of the lot, and my eye catches someone standing in the corner of the parking lot. It's the creepy guy, and he's standing there watching me. There's also no car with its lights on. I run back inside, double check that all the doors are locked, and I start to feel a sense of panic, that something really bad is about to happen, flow over me. I've never felt this feeling before while on my shift, and only once before in my entire life. Let's just say I have physical scars still from what happened that time. I get back to the front desk, and I immediately call the local PD. I explain the situation to dispatch, and they ask if it's ever happened before. I tell them no, but I also inform them that I'm the only employee on the property, and I would like for them to scan the parking lot and check in with me if possible. The PD pulls up and wants to get a description from me before searching the area. Well, as he's getting out of the car, he notices movement. The creepy guy takes off. The cop walks in a little nervous and tells me what he just saw while using his radio to call for backup. 3 more show up, and they discuss it, searching my parking lot and the 2 neighboring lots. They seem to come up with nothing, but stick around to patrol the parking lot until the sun comes up. The PD stopped by once since my shift started tonight to check on me, and said they would be in the area if I needed anything. While here, they tell me that a total of 3 men fled the parking lot from different directions that night. He believes that the creepy man was trying to lure me into the parking lot, away from the doors, so I would end up trapped between the 3 of them. He didn't go much further as to what could have happened from there, and honestly, I don't want to dwell on it. This happened a long time ago when I was younger, and I have a really bad memory. This is just me recounting the memory to the best of my ability, and what I was told. I also want to preface the story by saying that this story takes place somewhere in Indonesia, where it's somewhat more commonplace to have maids in your household. When I was younger, I had a strong relationship with my extended family. To me, it was normal to be close with your extended family. And when I mean extended, I don't even know how they're related to me, to be honest. In particular, I was close with my grandaunt's family, calling her Grandaunt Sheila, whose daughters/in-laws were like my big sisters. Being the eldest child, I liked being babied by them since I was always expected to be the big sister for my little brother. This is important for later. I was maybe 11 years old or younger. Neither my parents or I could remember when exactly it happened. I just want to say, as a kid I loved milk. I still do, though I tend to stick with skim milk for now. When I was younger I had a favorite local brand that had the usual strawberry flavor, The brand was called Ultra Milk. It was always cool that I was drinking something pink. Unbeknownst to my parents, a gift basket had showed up to our doorstep, and the maids had taken the gift, thinking it was a present from one of my mother's friends. My parents had even seen the gift basket, and didn't think much of it later. It was full of fruit, sweets, and the usual kinds of things you would send to someone maybe on a special occasion. It should have been weird that there wasn't a special occasion, but another weird part was that usually gift baskets had a card, or something to indicate where it had come from, but there was no indication from who it had come from this time. The maids had overlooked it, and my parents didn't notice at the time. They had assumed the head maid had checked it thoroughly, which she didn't. In the gift basket, there was my favorite tiny carton of my favorite milk, even strawberry flavored. I had lessons with a tutor, and oftentimes the maid accompanying me to the lesson would bring me snacks or food, since the tutoring could take a few hours. I was at my tutor's house, and she was teaching me about the homework I got today, when I got thirsty and got my carton of milk to take a sip out of it. I was ready to take a sip of the extremely sweet, artificially flavored strawberry milky goodness. But something was wrong. It didn't taste right. I don't remember what it did taste like, but I could tell immediately that something was very wrong. I remember describing to my parents that it felt like I had licked the bottom of a metal-framed chair that I had in my room and my desk. It just tasted awful. Thinking that maybe it was spoiled. My mom had warned me about drinking spoiled milk and how it can really upset your stomach. I immediately, without swallowing, grabbed some tissues at the table and spat out the mouthful into the tissue. I was surprised to see some sort of weird metallic beads in it. Like metal, but it was liquid. I've never seen anything like it, and I was so confused. My tutor was even more confused and horrified that I had just spat out a strange metallic substance. I didn't really understand what was going on, but my tutor immediately asked to take the carton of milk where I had tried to drink from, and told me to continue working while she went to investigate. Apparently, my tutor and her head maid went outside and poured a bit more of the milk into a tissue. There were more of this weird liquid metal bits in there. She asked me if I had drank any of it, and I told her that maybe I had taken a sip and swallowed before I realized something bad was in there. After that, my tutor called my mom and told her that I had possibly been poisoned. I went home without finishing my lesson, slightly concerned that maybe something was wrong. I went home and I don't really remember what happened after that. There isn't a poison control center in my country, and no emergency services that would really respond. Third world country and all that. So my parents took me to a doctor to have blood tests. I remember being pulled out of school. My mom wanted me to stay home from school for the next few days, which was great for me. No one told me the severity of the situation, and my mom just told me that she wanted me to chill at home for a while. No school? I get to have fun? No way. So that's what I did. I stayed home and watched Avatar: The Last Airbender on DVD, while my parents were fretting over the idea that I might have been poisoned by mercury. The gift basket, which had already been taken apart and stored to eat for later, was reassembled, and my parents tried to go with it to the police. They couldn't really do anything since we literally had no leads on where this gift came from, since it had no cards and the police really couldn't care less about our situation. I don't really know what happened other than that I was pretty cool with staying home and playing. My life at home wasn't perfect. I had some issues with my parents, but they were really nice to me during this time, so I enjoyed it a lot since I didn't really understand. I think my parents kept a lot of things from me, to keep me from getting scared. My parents even took me overseas to Singapore, even taking the liquid found in the carton with them in a tin, or whatever, to show the doctors there. I got tested some more and didn't seem to have any signs of the poisoning. I guess I didn't swallow enough of it. I'm not sure if it really was mercury. No one has ever told me. but at the end of the day, everyone was glad that I didn't drink enough of it to get affected by whatever it was. Now to get into the suspect part. My parents later told me that they had a sneaking suspicion that it was possible that Grandaunt Sheila was the one who tried to poison me. I didn't know this at the time, but around the time of this incident, she was found to have stolen gold and jewelry from my parents' store for years, worth somewhere in the thousands. My parents were furious and wanted to report her to the authorities, but my grandma, her sister, loved her too much and instead just cut contact with her. Since then, Sheila has seemed to want to enact vengeance over being caught and has been trying to get back at us. My mom had warned me that I couldn't play with the big sisters, Grandaunt Sheila's daughters, anymore, since they did something very bad, and to never get in the car with them if they showed up at my school. It hadn't clicked in my mind until now. Thinking back, she was close enough to me to know that I loved drinking milk, and maybe tried to hurt my family, even if it meant hurting her grandniece. We could never confirm if it was her, but Grandaunt Sheila has continued to be a thorn in my family's side for years now. Though my parents have learned a lesson, and ensured that whenever we received a gift basket, there always had to be a name on it. My grandmother doesn't believe her sister did it, but my parents firmly believe she was responsible. We had no proof, though, other than her horrible character. We received weird gifts, like black seeds, and hair that was supposedly used in some sort of witchcraft. We assumed that this was all from Grandaunt Sheila, who lived in the same city as us. It only made sense. My parents never bought me the Ultra Milk brand again, which I was okay with since that moment spoiled the brand to me. I was reminded of this story while drinking strawberry milk the other day. A different brand. I'm no longer living in Indonesia, not in the same country as Grandaunt Sheila. Even so. I was living downtown in a posh building that had a good restaurant next door. The restaurant and the apartment building opened at the same time, so it automatically sort of became where everyone in the building went. I worked across the street, so it was where my firm would have client meetings and happy hours. I went in one night alone near closing time, which I had done in the past, and sat at the bar. I had been out that evening to happy hour, but that had been several hours before, and I had been home since then. I ordered a steak dinner and a glass of wine, my favorite. I was familiar with the bartender because of the happy hours, and one specific first date where the guy I was meeting, who was from Poland, recognized the bartender's accent as Serbian. They had had some geopolitical banter while we had drinks, and the bartender seemed like an okay guy at the time. Mid-20s, average, and pretty nondescript. On this night, I'm pretty sure we had some small talk while he worked, but I don't think I actually engaged all that much with him. I don't even know his name. Anyway, halfway through my meal, I started to get ridiculously tired. Like barely keep your eyes open tired. I asked for a box for my meal. He took a while getting it, but when he presented it, he told me he was walking me home. I said no thanks. He insisted, 3 more times. At that point, I probably could have used the help walking, but I was so fully annoyed at being told someone was walking me home. Not only was I clear he was not welcome to do that, I actually had a habit of never letting a guy walk me to my door. I don't like randos to know where I live, and I once had an acquaintance try to push in with me after an all-building cocktail party. So yeah, there was no way this was going to happen, no matter what. I remember I got loud with my final no, and took a few more sips of wine. Hey, I paid $20 for that glass, and I was not going to waste it, as I stood to leave. He seemed a little taken aback. He snatched up my glass and said he was coming with me, so I remember that I simply left before he could do or say anything else. Well, I made it next door to my apartment, and as I'm going in the elevator, I could barely walk. I felt beyond drunk, even though I had barely finished half a glass of my wine. When I made it to the 8th floor, I could barely stand. I literally crawled from the elevator down my very long hallway, around the corner and almost to my door. When I got within feet from my door, my legs had stopped working completely. I could barely climb up the door to insert the key, but I somehow managed and dragged myself over the threshold. I woke up the next day slumped against my door, and I had wet myself. I've never lost control of my body, no matter how drunk I've gotten, and I definitely have never slept on the floor where I dropped. It was crazy. I had a hangover from hell, and I was trying to figure out all day what had happened. I told myself that since I had been at happy hour earlier, maybe I was just drunk and didn't know it when I went for my late meal. But I didn't remember feeling drunk when I was there, and I hadn't really eaten until the steak and potatoes I had ordered. I kept searching for a reason. It was a couple of days before I remembered how overly familiar the bartender had been in trying to walk me home. It chilled me what could have happened if that guy had done so. I had no proof that he had done anything, but somehow I just knew. I felt stupid I had gone back out that night, when I could have just eaten at home. And I felt stupid for not watching him more closely, even though I had been alone at a bar. I felt stupid for going to the bar at all, when I could have eaten at a table. But I just couldn't be sure enough of anything to report it anywhere. I just kind of hid for a couple of months, refusing to walk by the window in front of the bar side of the restaurant, and generally avoiding that corner altogether. It was at least 2 months before I could go back in that restaurant, and even then it was only for work. I was relieved when I didn't see him at the bar, but I had to ask in case he was coming later or something. When I asked where he was, the person behind the bar said really flatly, "Oh, him? Yeah, he's gone. We had to let him go." I remember searching the bartender's face for a clue, and picked up on some mild disgust. I said good or something, and he started to talk but thought better of it, and the conversation ended there.